What's up, Navigating Academia family? This is your buddy Dr. J. Phoenix Singh, your personal academic mentor, coming at you with part 4 of my ongoing series on wealth building as an academic. Now, you guys know as well as I do that when it comes to being an academic, there are a lot of things that are kind of routine parts of the job that a lot of people think that we get paid for. Sometimes they even think we get paid a lot for it. For example, publishing research articles, which subsequently get sold for, let's say, $20, $50, up to $100 even in some cases. But of course, we're not getting paid anything in the overwhelming preponderance of cases. And so at the end of the day, all of us are trying to do 150% of the work with really 50% of the money. And all of us obviously care about not only our own futures and our students' futures, but also our families' futures. So in terms of building transgenerational wealth and making sure that at the end of the day, we have enough of a nest egg to be able to retire when we desire to, all of us have to be in this thing together. You guys know that when it comes to academia, when I say that it's a little bit insular, that this is kind of an understatement, right? And especially when it comes to skill set building, it is very, very insular. The idea oftentimes is that if somebody has some knowledge, some like very specialized knowledge, then at the end of the day, they can kind of lord it over other people and basically say, only if you do what I ask or if you're compliant with my wishes and so forth, then I will give you that specialized skill set knowledge, or I will facilitate building bridges for you in the field, but only if you do what I say, when I say, so on and so forth. And I think a lot of people think about this in terms of grad school, because that's what we talk a lot about on this channel, but they also think about it when they actually get into academia as a career path and they start moving up and they realize that academia is heavily, heavily political, and that every single field has kind of little niches, little cliques, and so forth. And be sure to watch my video. It's one of my all-time favorites on this channel about how to deal with academic cliques and haters in the field, because that's something that you're going to run into, you know, for better or worse, and for most of the times for worse, okay? So in this series, the 3 tips that I've already shared with you guys and I go comprehensively into in my previous videos are: number 1, to be able to get a killer skill set that's resistant to recessions and temporal changes. The second one is don't just be an asset, build an asset. The third one is personality-wise to be naive, humble, and unflinchingly confident, which I really do believe. The next one is very practical, which is to beware your drug of choice. When I was growing up, I grew up in the 80s in the United States, and we had, President Ronald Reagan, his wife Nancy Reagan, this whole, Just Say No campaign and the DARE campaign and all these, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And, these were really big organizations and really big cultural messages that were out there. And they're important messages. And I think that they're great messages. And usually when you think about something like, beware of drugs, the drugs that you're thinking of are usually really heavy stuff, so things like cocaine or meth and, these are heroin, so on and so forth. But realistically, almost anything can be a drug, particularly when it comes to anything that, can activate your dopaminergic systems, like your reward centers of your brain. People can get addicted to exercise, people can get addicted to food, people can get addicted to virtually anything, right? So when I say your drug of choice, I really do mean at that individualized level for you. What is that thing that is serving as a drug for you? That is what I really care about you figuring out, because everybody has something like this. The older that you get, I'm 35 right now, the older that you get, the more you come to recognize not only your own strengths, but also your own limitations and the things that you really need to work on. And that's very unpleasant. I always say that the worst part, for example, of, let's say that you've just started dating, the hardest part of dating is looking at yourself in the mirror and being like, I'm not like a perfect person. Like, there's a lot of stuff that kind of sucks about me, right? And this is the same thing when it comes to anybody who thinks that, well, I don't have a drug or anything like this, that's not part of my life. I eat clean and I do yoga, do this, that, or the other thing. Everybody has something like this where maybe we're a little bit codependent on it. For me, I can tell you it's food, specifically like refined carbohydrates. So I'm talking about like cookies, crackers, cakes, these sorts of things. I've struggled with that ever since I was like a little kid. And certainly it's something for me that whenever, life gets really hard or work gets absolutely insane, which it does for everybody, I end up going for food, right? Like that is my thing. And because of that in my personal life, right, my weight tends to fluctuate really, quite a bit. So it's one of those situations where, that's it for me. For you, it could be the same thing, in which case I can commiserate, or it could be something totally different. But regardless of what it is, you need to recognize what it is in your life that essentially neurologically has a very similar I don't know what the exact term is, but basically neurologically you're going to end up having the exact same process gone through as if you were actually addicted to something like meth or something like this, right? So for example, for me, if I've eaten clean for like, let's say 4 months, like last year, or 2 years ago, I ate super clean for like 4 months. I lost like 20 some odd pounds. It was great, right? So everything was kind of, everything was kind of flattened. And then all of a sudden, just like if you got pulled over for a red light, right, for speeding by a police officer, and then, the next time you get in the car, you're going really, really slow. You're making sure you're not speeding. But as time progresses, you're just like, oh, okay, like I guess I'm safe and there's no cops around and this kind of stuff. Okay, maybe you start driving a little bit faster. And then eventually you're actually over the speed limit again. And maybe eventually you get pulled over again. This is kind of the same cycle that ends up happening with addiction. Insofar as, we're at this baseline, and then what ends up happening is that we start to kind of like develop tolerance. And it's not like the first day that you eat like, 10 cookies or something like this, you're like, boom. No, it's like slowly but surely it kind of goes up. Same thing if you're a smoker. Same thing with, the overwhelming preponderance of drugs, right? Could be something where maybe you're addicted to video games, you don't realize it, right? Just like you run away to games like every single day to be able to avoid all of your problems, right? You just kind of run away to that world. And I get it. And just like food isn't necessarily bad, video games aren't necessarily bad. I wouldn't say that I'm a gamer, right? But I definitely enjoy games every now and again, right? My buddy Will and I play Call of Duty Warzone, and I am freaking terrible, right? But still fun to play. So at the end of the day, right, like maybe you only play like an hour a day and you're like, this isn't that bad. But when times get tough or whatever it is, instead of playing an hour a day, you're playing like 5-6 hours a day. All of a sudden that tolerance starts to go up to the point where we're at that addicted level, to the point where then maybe your internet goes out, you can't play for a day online, and then all of a sudden you literally start getting the same physiological symptoms as if you were actually, addicted to a substance, right? Something like nicotine, for example. And this is because the brain circuitry regarding all these different types of addictions are really quite similar, if not identical. So at the end of the day, the important thing for you is to be able to recognize what is that thing for you. It could be a few things, but there will be at least one. And the most important thing I would say, frankly, at any point in your life, but most of my viewers are under the age of 35. So for those of you who are in that age, 20s to early to mid 30s, conquering yourself is going to be one of the most, if not the most important thing that you learn to be able to do. We say a lot on this channel, that classic saying that we won't always be motivated, so we have to learn to be disciplined. And when it comes to conquering yourself and you reaching out for whatever that drug is, it's particularly true, right? So when it comes to building wealth, you just have to recognize that a lot of it is that whole marshmallow test thing. And at the end of the day, marshmallow test, it has not been debunked, but at the end of the day, like replication or whatever crisis has like not been kind to the marshmallow test, if you know what I'm saying, right? And what that means, if you don't know what the replication crisis is in social sciences in general, or psych specifically, is that when we try to basically redo the exact same study using the identical methodology as the original protocol, like we can't replicate the study findings, right? So the basic idea behind the marshmallow test, we don't need to go through the protocol. Basic idea, though, is that, there are certain types of individuals who are better at kind of waiting for satisfaction, right, for longer, right? So they delay satisfaction. And those individuals, according to, that subliterature of social psych, they go on to have lives where there is a greater likelihood that they're going to be financially successful. I would say that I'm the king of the marshmallow test in terms of like that waiting game of life, of just delay gratification as long as possible. The reason is pretty clear for me, though, which is that I think that you can go from a lower standard of living to a higher standard of living a hell of a lot easier than you can go from living at a high standard of living and bringing that down. So you need to get that level of living that you're at to be sustainable, right? And for me, what that means is sustainable using passive income sources. This way, if God forbid anything happens to me, my family's going to be completely fine, right, through passive income sources. Now, unfortunately, even if you use something like a 4% annual withdrawal rate, which we can talk about sometime if you're interested, but 4% rule, which a lot of people say that that's wrong, it should be a little bit lower. Some people say now it should be a little bit higher. Regardless, all I'm trying to say is that let's say that you have, let's just say, nice round number, $100, right? $100 in the bank. Okay, no, you cannot withdraw, $10 a year or whatever and have that thing last. But supposedly, right, if you end up, taking out just about 4% of it a year over a specific number of years after retirement, then it's something where that money is going to last. Okay, and obviously it's more complicated than that, but that's the simple shorthand. It's 4%. And this number needs to be changed depending on how long you're planning on retiring and what your ordinary income was, so on and so forth. But it's really, really critical to understand that the more that you can save up front, the better, right? And that's really, really hard because I have found that when I try to do that, when I delay gratification, as opposed to just going out and, buying stuff and just experiences and these sorts of things, but going crazy on that stuff, because you do need to do it in moderation, but going crazy on that stuff instead of saving more now than maybe you would be able to later, because compounding, oh my God, the earlier you can save money, just not effing touch it, right? And just let it grow, your life is going to be ridiculous, right? And I know that when you're 20 or 30 or 35 like I am right now, it seems like life is going to go on forever and ever and ever, and you have unlimited time to be able to save and this kind of stuff. But that's not the case, right? The earlier you can get on that saving wagon, the better. And let me tell you, you will live a flipping phenomenal life. And literally, it's just living for a certain number of years so that you can live and give, like Dave Ramsey said, if you know Dave Ramsey, for like nobody else can down the line. That's the key thing, right? But while you're delaying gratification, oftentimes it will seem very unjust. It will feel unjust that other people who are going into crazy debt or are not saving anything or not as much as they should be or are not thinking about their future as much as you are, that they're just spending. Right? They're spending and buying all the crazy shit, and they're going out and doing all this stuff and these things, and you will feel a sense of, if not jealousy, envy of those people, and you'll think to yourself, hey, well, this seems messed up. It seems messed up that, you happen to be saving while everybody else is spending. But obviously down the line, this, curve is going to invert dramatically and very quickly. This is what I've found between my 20s and my 30s. It is alarming to see what happened to the people who took on huge amounts of debt, bought the cars, bought the jewelry, bought the clothes, bought all these sorts of things, bought degrees in terms of, tuition that they couldn't afford and took on huge amounts of debt versus the people who cash flowed things. It's insane. I can't tell you guys, just, if you're looking into the future or whatever, and I'm the future, if you're, younger than 35, it's crazy, right, how that inverts. But unfortunately, when you get envious, when you get jealous of these sorts of things, and you feel that the world is unjust, oftentimes what happens is that you kind of are more likely to reach for that drug of yours. So you need to figure out what that preferred drug is. Everybody in their life has trauma. This trauma could come from some kind of an abuse. It could be, from parents or siblings, or it could be from, other family members or friends or peers. It could be from your graduate supervisor. It could be from whoever in your life. Everybody has some kind of trauma. I'm a huge proponent of therapy for everybody. It doesn't matter whether you've got any active signs or symptoms of a major mental illness. If you are capable financially of being able to actually, pay for mental health care, especially if it's somebody who's in network, so it'll be super affordable with your insurance, I highly recommend doing so because it teaches you a huge amount about yourself. I was in therapy for years, absolutely loved it. It taught me a huge amount. I'm a huge proponent of it. I'll talk about it, up and down because the literature is very, very clear about its utility, provided you've got a strong therapeutic alliance with your therapist. But regardless, guys, a huge amount of the variance when it comes to building wealth and amassing wealth, because you can build it a lot faster if you just delay gratification. But these drugs do end up, rearing their ugly heads, and these are not just illicit substances out there. So figure out what those things are, control the controllables, and anything that you don't perceive you can control, see if you can get some help from a behavioral health care specialist. Make sure that they're licensed, from an accredited university or accredited program, and make sure you find somebody whose system actually works for you. Okay, their orientation actually resonates with you. If you ever need help or ever want to talk about any of those things in terms of finding the right kind of person, feel free to book a session below. We can talk about that. Or maybe you're struggling with something and just want some coaching about it with regards to just trying to figure out how to be able to delay gratification in the present such that in the future you can actually live a life like nobody else can live. If you're interested in anything like that, always feel free to reach out to me via the website below. Alright guys, so that is number 4. I will see you guys in the video for number 5. Talk to you guys soon. God bless you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.